In October of 2020, I made a video about choosing to play Pokemon in an unfun way. You could describe that as a reboot of this channel, refocusing on the types of videos I wanted to make. Well, 5 years later, and those are certainly not the kind of videos I want to make now. My plan was to do the same challenge in all the games, with Pokemon Gold and Silver next. After some light research to plan a route, I learned that it wouldn't be possible, or at the very least, not entertaining. Unless you want to learn about the time my translator stole $4.5 million from me and lost it all on the DraftKings MGM Goldenrod Game Corner sponsored by Bet Caesar Sportsbook. So, without that gimmick, I didn't know if I'd do any more Pokemon videos. That is until I thought of a very funny joke. A joke that will not make an appearance in this video. For the sake of covering all the games, I first have to talk about Pokemon Gold and Silver. And for Pokemon 2nd generation, I wanted to see if it was still my favorite gen. Now, as a man in his 30s, the cynical mind of an adult started seeing the cracks very quickly. For one, the obvious saturation of Gen 1 Pokemon in the game. Though, this makes sense given the lore of the two regions. The proximity of Johto and Kanto are pretty much connected. You can accidentally step into Kanto. Though, this is a somewhat persistent problem for all subsequent games, except for one. We'll talk about that game at a later date. For this playthrough, I only wanted to use Pokemon from Johto. Of course, Heracross was at the top of my list. As a child, I avoided Pokemon that didn't evolve. To me, the point was to have them evolve. Now I see guys like Heracross, Hawlucha, and Stunfisk and think that those guys rule. The problem with catching a Heracross in Silver and Gold is that you need an advanced degree in mathematics to understand how to find one. Now the other problems are ones people have brought up for years. The lack of new fire types in Johto is one, though that has always been a problem for some of the games up until very recently. This problem does extend to other types. 10 Pokemon are just not found in Johto, even though they were introduced in that game. This is also compounded with the low level curves, and these new Pokemon are creating just a time sink just to use them. This problem continues with new evolutions and types. 10 Kanto Pokemon get new evolutions. Espeon, Umbreon, and Crobat are available by the 3rd gym if you have the patience. Politoed and Slowking require backtracking after getting Surf, and Kingdra is accessible when you beat the 8th gym. The rest require you to have beaten the Elite Four for the first time before we even have a chance at getting them. Want a Porygon too? Well, I hope you saved up all your Draft MGM King dollars from the Game Corner in Johto just so you can then use them in Kanto to get a Porygon. Want a Blissey? Chansey is still only available in the Safari Zone, so oh well. Scizor and Steelix require you to beat the Elite Four and go on the SS Aqua, which sucks because their typings are one of the new ones. Speaking of the new types, that's also a bad time. The Steel types are essentially non-existent in Johto, Fortress being the only new Pokemon with that typing that you can get early on in the game. The others being ones that were given that typing. And no offense to Magnemite and Magneton, but no thanks, buddy. Mareep is a better electric type. The new dark type was added was necessary. It was there to deal with the busted psychic types. They are also hard to come by. Umbreon is the only Pokemon you can get in Johto that has the dark type. Tyranitar, Houndour, Doom, and Murkrow are locked until you make it to Kanto and get their 8 badges. Most players are not going to dump a Pokemon they've used for 8+ hours just to spend more time getting a new one to an appropriate level. Give me the cool new guys now. Why are we hiding them? We are children with no patience. My prefrontal cortex was not yet fully developed and I require immediate satisfaction now. If Game Freak, Nintendo, Pokemon Company locked general, non-legendary, mythic Pokemon behind insane checks, people would lose their minds. Could you imagine in Gen 6, when fairy types were introduced, of the 9 new Pokemon that get that type, and the 22 that gained it. Instead, it's only 6 in total that had that typing, 3 of which were locked until you had 7 gym badges. It's a good thing Gold and Silver has a large and good enough post-game, especially for the time. These were selling points of the game, and having them locked by some arbitrary checkpoint sucks. Playing the game as an adult, there were some things I appreciated more. I'm more open-minded to what Pokemon I'd use, and also just more knowledgeable about where influences come from. On the Pokemon design front, I think Gen 2 has some very good designs. A lot of them rip. Look at Scizor. Despite being available 8 hours in the game, he fucks. I will say that, yes, there are some clunkers. Literal Pinecone, regular Pufferfish, some third doll design choice for the comedy rule of 3s. Now, this isn't out of the ordinary. Most, if not all, generations of Pokemon have some not fun designs. I know what you're thinking. It's either,
"You're right. Gen 1 had the best designs. So true."
or,
there are some really lame designs in future Pokemon games.
well, I've already done this bit. At least I think I've done this bit. And I'll do it again. Oh, you really think it's just the later gens that have bad designs, bro? Really? Really? You think it's limited to just the newer games? Really, bro? Have you seen Small Ball and Yoga Ball? What about Pile of Goop? Bro, don't even get me started on regular birds. I'll probably make this point in all videos until I'm blue in the face. The discourse that Pokemon designs have gotten worse is a very nuanced one, but nitpicking the lazier designs shouldn't be a part of this discourse. Johto as a region is good. It's smaller scale, it's quaint, the cities are smaller and homier compared to that of Kanto. Going to the biggest city, Goldenrod, is a culture shock in the game. There is so much going on in it. If Golden One was in Kanto, it would probably still be the biggest city, but it wouldn't feel nearly as big, especially when most other towns have a lot going on for them. With Johto being connected to Kanto, it makes sense for it to feel smaller. Obviously, due to their real-world counterparts, that's reflected, and it makes that feel even better because you get to go to Kanto after your Johto adventure. That was the biggest draw of the games, and something people have wanted from the new games since. It's amazing they did that on a dinky Game Boy cartridge. Going back to the players' old stomping grounds, for a harder challenge in re-challenging the gym leaders you've faced in a previous life is a feeling yet to be recaptured for me in other Pokemon games. Sure, in future games you get to re-battle gym leaders in a tournament style, but you're not exploring those regions. This led to the ultimate challenge of the game, Mount Silver, and the battle with the ultimate trainer, Red. Thinking back on it now, boy, did that game leave you very unprepared for that fight, given how high level he was in comparison to Kanto gyms and the second trip to the Elite Four. It's easy to see and trace these differences in areas. Kanto is supposed to represent the very real Kanto region of Japan, where Johto is supposed to represent the Kansai region. Both are the most populous, but the two could not be more different. It is the new versus old, Kanto representing the rebuilt Japan post-World War II, bigger and more modern cities. Johto represents the old traditional Japan most Westerners would be familiar with. It's probably why Goldenrod, the Osaka stand-in, feels a bit out of place in Johto. Them being able to instill these very different regional flavors this early on as representatives and mirrors for their own areas of Japan, and it's really fun. Hey there guys, Editing Ted here. I wanted to add this in because my brain made a brain blast connection when I was at a city pop J-pop show the other day. This was more like a cover band at in a bar, but the front man had made an innocuous joke where he's like, "We have one member from Japan. He's from Osaka. It's very dangerous there." And I sat there going, what the fuck? Why would he say that? And then he was like, "Oh, well, my mom's from Japan. She's from Tokyo. She always said that." And I was like, damn, of course your mom would be from Tokyo and she would say that. And I say this because of course it's everywhere, regionalism's everywhere in the world, but there is this big, little brother, big brother type thing with Osaka and Tokyo, where they really don't like each other. And it made me think about the connection between Kanto and Johto and how there is this little friction between them too, in terms of how one is looked at like an inferior place, you're a dumb hick from being from Johto. Blue/Gary really says you're from Johto. Your badges literally mean nothing, dude. You're a baby town, baby region with baby Pokemon re-rule, and just made more the so the dynamic between the two regions all the more interesting. And yet again, something that's not really explored in other games. Maybe it is on a different level that I haven't really explored yet, but just wanted to chime in with that. I spent hours looking for where they drew their inspirations from each city, both in Johto and Kanto, which led me to a video about the ruins of Alph, which is an incredible watch. I like the rival. He is far less one-dimensional than Blue/Gary was in Gen 1. He is a garbage person who has sort of a face turn after you trounce him one too many times. I like that he has a Haunter but never a Gengar before, because he doesn't really have any friends. I like that you learn his name because he dropped his ID and the officer asks for his name, but for some reason you were a dumb idiot child, you'd probably just name him ? Because when you saw the ID, it just said ? And you stupidly thought that was his name. Who would be that dumb, that big dumb idiot to do that? It's October 15th, 2000. I am a third grader for some perspective. Pocket Monsters hit big with the success of the games, anime, and trading cards. It turned kids into actual Pocket Monsters. I chose Pokemon Silver mainly because Homeboy was in Pokemon 2000. Now, Gold and Silver was the first time I can remember where a video game became a problem, one that infected my school. I was an absolute degenerate and was disengaged with school, thus leading me to bring my Game Boy to school. A problem that would persist throughout my entire academic career. I remember waiting for my after-school program with my other chums, and we were playing the game. I was in the Olivine City Lighthouse, picked up a rare candy. My friend Christian said, "Hey, use that on Quilava. He'll evolve." And he did. An unforeseen problem of playing Pokemon games with actual friends was that none of them would trade for me. Now, it wasn't because we weren't real friends. None of us had a link cable, locking us out on some of the coolest and newest Pokemon that these games had to offer. I know I keep saying it, but I wanted Scizor so bad. I remember gritting out the Whitney battle and lamenting to my friends that she sucked. And to my relief, I wasn't the only one who thought so. I recall learning the duplication glitch. It was how I ended up with a team of almost all Typhlosions. I remember sitting in the back of my grandparents' car in Mammoth Lakes, California. It was maybe the spring of 2000, maybe earlier, and we were up there for some kind of trip, usually to go fishing this time of year. Why did Pokemon 2000 come out before the games did? I remember playing the Flash games for the movies while I was in Mammoth, but the movies came out before that. Pokemon 2000 came out in the summer of 2000, a couple months before the game. I guess my adult brain is sort of piecing together advertising patterns that big corporations use to ensure that products move units, or that units are moved. The product is being moved in a sense. Anyways, I remember beating Red in that car in a parking lot while my grandfather was buying fishing supplies to catch food that I absolutely despised at that time. This is all to say that I have very fond memories of Pokemon Silver, a Pokemon game I've only played once, the first time I played it. Now, if you're wondering why I speak fondly about Silver and not third game and the superior version, Crystal, well, it's simple. I never owned Pokemon Crystal, because as a child, I thought it was functionally the same as Silver. Now, when I say I've only played Pokemon Silver once, that's, I guess, would be a lie. I played Heart Gold and Soul Silver, the remakes for the DS, multiple times, and there was also a fantastic ROM hack called Shiny Gold that I played a ton of. Pokemon Silver does what a sequel should do. It looks visually better. Having actual defined color palettes for everything certainly helps, but that's more due to the difference in hardware of the Game Boy Color versus the original Game Boy. Also, the sprites look miles better. To be fair, the bar was not that high. Have you seen this teacher sprite from those games? What a picture. It added new types despite them being limited and not as accessible. The new region is good and has a lot of charm, like how Kanto has charm, but very different. Obviously, the ability to go back to Kanto was a game-defining moment, something we didn't even know was a thing until it happened, something that we yearn for 20 years later. Pokemon Silver added a lot of standard affairs to the Pokemon games, a day and night cycle even though it didn't appear again until the DS games, gendered Pokemon and forcibly breeding them. Shiny Pokemon were added, obviously given the red Gyarados. And for the competitive scene, it added held items. Pokemon Silver, Gold, and Crystal are good, but the Pokemon games are good to begin with. And is Pokemon Silver still my favorite game after replaying it for the first time in over 23 years? Yes. It was always going to be my favorite. It wasn't like watching an old show that you're nostalgic for and you suddenly realize that you're old enough to see that, whoa, these characters, these situations aren't nearly as wholesome as I remember. I realized halfway through playing Pokemon Silver that I wasn't going to be swayed in my opinion. I don't know. I feel like I wasted time and energy in this. I thought I'd have something interesting to say about a game I loved as a kid, as an adult now. This was never going to be a full review because I just wanted to confirm something. And getting the confirmation before I even step foot into Kanto doesn't make for interesting writing. Maybe it's just a case of nostalgia making me biased. That's what nostalgia does, though. Nostalgia is a sort of a parasite. It latches on to core memories, making you wistful for those times. It controls what you like, how you develop, what you prefer, and gravitate towards. And when we revisit these things, we have this urge to hold them close because they're so dear to us. We get older, so our tastes change, but they have changed because of that foundation. Maybe something deep down doesn't want us to accept that we don't like what we did hold dear to us from our childhood because we don't want our perception of ourself to be shattered, leaving us questioning why we are the way we are. This is a copy of Pokemon Silver I bought while in Japan. I bought it thinking I'd use it as a tool to further my handle on the Japanese language, but I'm sort of running into the same problem I had when I rented Pokemon Crystal from Blockbuster. Upon seeing someone's own save file, I felt paralyzed. Playing that save file felt weird. It was never really mine. Deleting it felt wrong because I was effectively erasing someone's memory, even if it was temporary, rented from Blockbuster, given back without a second thought. It sort of made me think about a Ristic Studies video about cards being priceless, how using and the wear and tear you put into a thing is more valuable to a person than the preservation, the mint quality, the perfection of the object itself before you even get a chance to use it. Maybe I'll get into this in a future video, but for this instance, it made me think of this copy of Silver. A copy that will never really be my copy. I can't look at it and think about my past, sitting in a Lexus in a parking lot in a fish shop as my cousin and I beat red. That object is lost to time, and I think it's better that way, with me remembering that Pokemon Silver, my version of it, is still my favorite Pokemon game.